Hey everybody, welcome to this New York Comic Con Metaverse panel. My name is Eric Kallenborn, and we're excited to have you here today because what I have is a group of educators that is going to talk about how we started a Finer Things Club during quarantine. So a little bit about ourselves before we get into it. Like I said, my name is Eric Kallenborn. I'm a teacher on the south side of Chicago for over 15 years. I focus primarily on comics and graphic novels in the classroom. You could follow me on social media at comics_teacher. And I also have a YouTube channel that I review comics and graphic novels and do educational videos on those things as well. And you could find me on YouTube at comics teacher. Ronell Whitaker, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hey, I'm Ronell Whitaker. I am also an educator on the south side of Chicago. I'm currently an administrator. Department chair for District 218, the South Suburbs. I've been using comics in the classroom for the last 10 years. And the only thing I have to talk about for promotion in social media is Mr. Whitaker at Mr. Whitaker on Twitter and the comic book teacher on Instagram.
Thank you, Ronell. Mr. Adam Ebert.
Hey, everybody. My name is Adam Ebert. I am also an educator on the south side of Chicago. I teach freshman reading at Bloom High School in Chicago Heights. This is my 6th year as a teacher, and each of those 6 years I've been utilizing comics, graphic novels, and a bunch of other multimedia in my classroom after I linked up with these fine gentlemen on this panel.
Thank you, Adam. Adan Alvarado.
Yeah, we'll make it 4 in a row. I'm Adan Alvarado, teacher on the south side of Chicago. Teach American Lit, African American and Latin American literature. Also use a lot of comics, music, film, television, all things pop culture. In the classroom. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Adan. And our buddy on the East Coast, Michael Gianfrancesco.
Hi, yeah, my name is Mike Gianfrancesco. I am also a teacher with 16 years in the classroom. I do not teach in Chicago. I teach in the Providence, Rhode Island area. And I, like all of these great educators, teach a lot with comics. My Twitter, if you want to follow me, is @tryingteacher.
So we're here today because during quarantine, teachers and all of us really like to stay connected, and we missed social interaction. So once a week during the start of the pandemic, 4 of us on here Michael came along later, we'll talk about that in a minute. 4 of us would get together every week and we would talk about some media it didn't start like that. It started as like a teacher check-in with each other to see how we were doing, how everybody was getting along. And then we just started adding media into the mix and talking about a graphic novel here, a film here, an album here. And then it became a more recurring thing for us to just stay connected and for us to stay busy and give us something to do because we couldn't really go out anywhere. And we've kind of kept it going. And with the school year starting and things slowly getting back to, I dare say, slightly normal, we've been more lenient in kind of doing it less, but it's still an important part of what we do a couple times a month. So the first question I'm going to throw out is to Adan. And Adan, I would just like to ask you to talk about the types of media that we've all chosen for Finer Things Club discussions.
Yeah, so we sort of essentially broke it down into 3 categories, which I guess we would call like viewing, listening, watching, right? So the viewing would always be some sort of television show and or film. If it was a television show, we kind of had a few rules where it'd be like, hey, try to watch at least like the pilot and 2nd episode. If you go beyond that, great. But we'll be discussing at least those first, typically 2 episodes at least, depending on the length of the show that we were watching. We'd also move into listening, which was the 2nd category. We check out an album in its entirety and or a podcast would be the other sort of listening opportunity we'd have or suggestion we'd toss out. And then the last would be reading. So we would either read a short story of, the person who was selecting that week's choosing, or it would be a graphic novel and or comic. If it was an ongoing series, again, kind of like with the television shows, we'd ask to watch it or read at least the first, 2, 3, 4 issues, depending on how many were out.
And we're going to get into in a little bit how we select individually, how we each select the things that we pick for the selection for that week for Finer Things Club. So before we get into that, though, we have a few more questions to deal with. So I'm going to throw this one out to Adam. Adam, we have a few rules in the Finer Things Club that have kind of come up organically. You want to talk a little bit about what those rules are and kind of how they came about?
Yeah, so the first thing is obviously we're picking three things as our finer things, right? So we're not trying to overload our workload, because at some point in March and April and May, we were still teaching. And I know personally, I had a couple things, meetups and things, Dungeons and Dragons, a couple other like film clubs that I would meet up with at night. So I didn't want to overload how much content I was consuming every single couple weeks. So we definitely limited ourselves to three things. Obviously, as Adan said, right, we picked particular pieces of media that would lend themselves to that time frame and discussion and things that we already love. But the other thing was mainly new or completely new to everyone. So I'm not going to pick my favorite film and then, have the potential that it gets eviscerated by my peeps on the Finer Things Club, right? So we're all trying to discover these things together and then have those discussions kind of at the ground level, not, bringing something that is near and dear to us. Also keeping things that are mostly accessible. So some of the film choices at first were the more independent, less accessible to everyone picks. So we kind of pulled back from that and really, again, made considerations for this group based on their likes, based on what they're interested in, as we were considering our picks. And that's something we'll talk about more in a second too. But the final thing is no turning back. So if we have a 2 or 3 week period before we talk, someone might watch it right away or read it right away or listen to it right away. And they may be like, "Ooh, man, this is like kind of stinky. I don't know if this is something I want to like put forward or I feel like good about," but there's no turning back. Like we're locked in. If even if you do research and something doesn't fit right, we're moving forward and discussing it warts and all. So, and kind of just embracing that conversation that comes through too, right? Not saying like, all right, well, maybe there's a lot of things wrong with this, but let's talk about the good and the bad together.
Which organically leads us into our next discussion here, which is each individually talking about how we select those items for Finer Things Club. So I'll jump off here. I'll go first and talk about, I generally like to pick a graphic novel since I'm reading and reviewing them all the time and wanting to stay as current as possible, a film because I just enjoy films. And then the third thing I usually throw out is an album because like most of us, I like listening to music. So for the graphic novel, I have a list of so many things that I haven't read that I want to read that I just pick something off of that list. And then that's going to give me a purpose for kind of reading that and getting it off the list and having a group of friends that I can speak about it with. As far as films go, I don't necessarily have a list like that for films. And like Adam said, we generally pick stuff maybe that's lesser known because sometimes we do, because we have such everybody in this group has such a broad taste that it's hard to pick something that all of us haven't seen or watched or listened to yet. So what I generally do then is I'll reach out to some of my friends who are more film buffy and I'll say, hey, give me some examples to throw out for Finer Things Club this week that I haven't seen, and maybe we're hoping people haven't seen yet either. So they'll throw me some movies that they found interesting in some way, shape, or form. And like, I have no idea what those things are going to be like. Either they're just like, yeah, this one's crazy, bring this up. And then I will suggest that. I am probably, I don't know if we talk about this in a little bit. I've probably brought up a couple of the movies that have been a little cringeworthy and have we're texting in the middle of the week, like, do we want to do this? And then like, like Adam said, one of those rules is like, once you're in, like there's no turning back. And those lead to some really interesting, fun discussions. So we'll just kind of go around the horn here. Michael, do you want to talk about how you make your picks? We can't hear you, Mike.
Yeah, I was the most recent addition to the group, begging Eric to let me in when I found out that they were doing it. Because I really, I've been working with these guys for years, and I was, kind of in a vacuum out here on the East Coast, and they're all together in Chicago, even though, we were individual, quarantine and whatnot. But so when my first set of picks, I've only made one set so far, and I'm coming up in a couple of rounds for my next set. I think the first time I did it, I wanted to try to find picks that would impress this group because I wanted to make a good first impression, which didn't work out so well necessarily across the board. But I also I have like every streaming service, and I've got a huge watch list. So for films or TV shows, I just pull down those lists and cherry pick the ones that I thought would be stuff that I've been wanting to get to but hadn't. With graphic novels, that's easy. I've got a stack next to my bed of books I haven't read yet. So it was easy for me to pull a book from there. But with albums, and I had a huge apology at my first meeting with these guys because I don't know music as well as some of, particularly like Adan, Ronell, any of them really for that matter, Adam and Eric. I'm not as eclectic in my taste in music. It's kind of milquetoast. So finding something that wasn't going to be boring or trite by their standards was a real challenge as well. So I'm still feeling that. My second round of picks is coming up. I'm already starting to agonize over it, but I think the further with every meeting, I learn more about the things I don't know as much about. So that helps. And like Eric said, I use friends that seem a little more informed to make recommendations that I can bring to this group.
Thanks, Michael. Ronell, can we have you speak to how you make your awesome selections?
Yeah, I don't know about awesome all the time, but I try to just look at stuff that I've wanted to experience or things that I've wanted to, like, been on my list forever. But then also, I've been intentionally picking stuff from creators of color or people from marginalized groups. For me, that's just always been an important thing, but to make sure that, our media is representative of, reality, right? So like one of the flicks I picked first up was, directed and starred a Black woman, which was, I think that was really important for me to, include there. But other than that, it was just like, I've always wanted to watch this thing, or I've always wanted to read this book. Let's see if I can throw it out to everybody, and whether they like it or not will be up to our discussion later.
Thanks, Ronell. Adan, let's hear how you make your picks.
Yeah, like when it comes to reading, I'm a big fan of short stories, so I often lean that direction. And I kind of know that the rest of these guys, they're in it when it comes to like graphic novels and comics. Like I read them too, but these dudes know everything about them. So I rely a lot on their picks. So when it comes to my pick, I typically go short story, though I have picked a graphic novel and a comic a couple times. For me, like Eric's list of all those comics and Michael's list of that bedside set of comics is more music. I just have a list of things that I need to get through. It's the thing that I love the most. So there's a long list that I have of music that I want to check out, and I typically pull from that list and toss out to these dudes. And it's always interesting just to have that conversation because there's things that just having that, eclectic set of taste in this group is just fun because there's music that I've listened to where I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. People are like, yeah, not so much. And then other times where we've listened to it where, they liked it a lot more and some other people didn't. So that's just a cool part of this group in general. In terms of viewing, I think that's pretty standard. I just look for films for me, it's normally directors. If there's a director I really like and I haven't seen one of their films coming up or I haven't seen one of their past films, I'll typically go that route and pick. So this week coming up, we're taking a look at a Jennifer Kent film, her film Nightingale.
Thanks, Adan. I do that too with the directors, and that's how we got Dogtooth. And maybe Dogtooth, we could talk about that a little bit later in the panel. But right now, I want to hear from Adam Ebert how he makes his picks.
So obviously echoing a lot of what the other guys have said, but I always start with things that I personally, want to check off a list or, I've seen just kind of rattling around in social media or my brain in general, right? Like, okay, I think this is something I need to check off because I'm hearing a lot of people praise it or talk about it, and I want to get into it. And I also want to have this kind of one-on-one, not one-on-one, but this group discussion of let's talk about this together with people who, again, I know I'm going to have a really good conversation and a really good discussion with, as opposed to looking at reviews or even social media. What I think brings a higher level of appreciation for a lot of the things that we're ingesting is that I get to talk about them and I get to consider them from a bunch of different angles. So definitely making that consideration of things that are on my checklist. But then the next step is just knowing this crew well enough to be like, all right, like if I'm down to a couple, one of the considerations I made last round was movies under 90 minutes, because that is crucial. We had some, if we're talking like a movie like 2 hours and 25 minutes, like I'm like, let's not, like, even if it's a good movie, let's not like break our backs with that. So, I was making like 90-minute considerations, and there's like some, again, great films at that 90-minute mark. So, I'm thinking about length, I'm thinking about accessibility, I'm thinking again, how what I'm putting in front of the group is going to like mesh with them. And a lot of times I'm like completely off base, where I'm like, oh, like I think here's how Eric's going to respond to this, and here's how Adan's going to, talk about this, and here's what, Ronell's going to think. Here's what Michael's angle is going to be. I'm usually like, sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm just completely off base. But that is like a consideration. Like, okay, like I know what these guys are like. I'm not trying to like cater to taste, but I'm trying to find things that are kind of, deepen in that palate. Maybe I could say that's like a super fancy way of saying it. But, I'm looking at things that are sometimes trying to be fringe, even though they're really not. And yeah, just, again, just trying to, again, doing a vetting process, looking at reviews as much as I can, to say like, is this thing, something that's going to hold up for a whole group? So, there's a bunch of different things, but it's usually just like, is it good? Do I want to talk about it? Are these guys also going to dig it or have an angle on it that we can talk about for, an hour or so?
It's funny that you said that. When you start thinking about like how we're all going to react to certain media that we throw out there, because we watched the show Barkskins, and I didn't know anything about Barkskins whatsoever, and I didn't look at anything about it before I sat down one night to start watching it for the club, and I thought, Barkskins, oh, this is a cartoon about a family of dogs, and I sat down to watch it, and it was not a cartoon about a family of dogs whatsoever. And because I had my expectations to something completely different, I was like, I wasn't into it. I wasn't fully invested in that moment. And I didn't like it as much as I could have. And when we got to the group, everybody's like, dude, you probably should have loved that. And I was like, yeah, but I was expecting animated dogs. And I didn't get that. So it's funny how that works sometimes, which is another good reason to do media that none of us have ever watched before. All right. So the four of us in Chicagoland area did this because we've been teacher friends and for a long time, and sharing, ideas and plans and hanging out and buying comics together for a long time. Michael was a later addition to the group. So if you are starting a Fire Things Club, I think we would like Michael to speak for a minute about like how you felt as a newbie to the crew, what made you want to kind of join our group, and just speak to a little bit about that if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. I did kind of already touch on this a moment ago, but just to expand a little on that, like I said, I love pop culture. I love being exposed to new texts, whether they're music, podcasts, books, short stories, movies, television shows. Like, when we were all, we're still to a large degree kind of homebound as a result of the pandemic, particularly, over the summer when, as teachers, we are still working and planning, but we're blowing off steam and traveling very often. None of that was possible. So, everything was still kind of closed and there wasn't much to do. When I found out, Eric mentioned that this group existed just in passing in a conversation we were having. I've known all these guys for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years now. We've been working together, traveling together, doing cons together, programming, shows like New York and C2E2 and Emerald City and stuff, and doing educational content. We are also friends. We're not just workmates, to that degree. We're buddies. And the conversation we have when we get together was always kind of around, what are you watching, what are you reading, what are you listening to? And when I found out that they had organized this kind of group of educators, like I said, I really wanted to be a part of it. And I kind of hammered Eric for a little while. or any chance related and allow you to kind of sit in once and intelligent, logical, and try to fit in. But what I discovered really quickly is that that wasn't really necessary. They just, this group wants honesty, even if it's, you may be the one person that doesn't like something when everybody does. So, and I should note that anyone that I mentioned this group to, when I tell my friends, my teacher friends locally about it, they're all like, we need to do that. How can I be in it? To the point where I think we've decided to actually start letting guests join us each round, like a special guest from outside the group to come in and just be another voice, a new voice in the group, which I mean, and we're doing this panel, we're telling the world about this thing. So yeah, like I said, as a newbie, I think at first it was all about, am I right? Am I going to fit in? And very quickly it became like, we're already friends. So this is just an extension of conversations we already have.
Thanks, Michael. Ronell, we have instituted kind of a rating system each week, and then at the end of a round, we talk about our favorites. Can you talk to us a little bit about your opinions of like the rating system? Is it important? Is it not important? And how is it added to our experience?
I mean, human beings love categorizing and putting things in orders, right? Like, it's just kind of what we do. And at first, like, I don't know if I was really interested in a rating system, right? Like a thumbs up, thumbs down, number of stars thing at first, but it just kind of organically happened. And we were like, so how would you rank these, from this week, like from numbers 1 through 3? And I think that made sense after a while, right? Because it was like, we wanted to still talk about the quality of something without, having that high stakes, like judgment of this thing is bad. I think when we rank them, it kind of makes it much more a conversation about like, this is how this landed for me, right? So like, Eric brought up, that he has brought 2 of the worst movies to our group. There have been 3 that have been bad, but he brought 2 and bad for me, right? Like, when I look at those flicks, somebody likes that movie, man. Like, somebody really loves Guns Akimbo out there. I'm going to say the name, I don't care. Somebody out there is like a fan of that. And I thought it was hot trash, but that was for me. Like, to me, I would not want to subject anybody else to watch that movie, but somebody out there is doing fan art of it, and more power to them. But what happened for us though is we started to see like we can kind of calibrate. Like, it kind of gets to what Adam talked about, right? Like, we started to, I think, calibrate what we think we know that person's gonna like. So when we start to pick, it might influence that. And the good portion of what we're trying to do really is have a good time. Like, I got movies that I could suggest for us to do that we could just crap on for like an hour, but like, why? Like, I don't think that's the point of it. The point of it is we're trying to find things that we could come together and fellowship on, because at the end of the day, like, the real reason for us starting this group was that we missed each other, right? And it's just, I think having this conversation was just a way for us to kind of keep each other honest and say like, hey man, how you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? And then let's also talk about this really cool, show that you picked or something like that. But at the end of the day, like, I think, even when we were talking about this panel, I was thinking like, this could be a really cool way to like graduate into the classroom even, and find some ways to have kids talk about, their own opinions about things, and kind of like live in the fact that you are allowed to have an opinion about something, and it's not being a hater, and it's not, tearing something down. It can be as valuable as you have a set of values that you think are, good for you, and you can rank them that way.
I really like that you said the idea of we're not picking things that are bad, right? We're not trying to pick things that are bad. This isn't a how is it made type podcast where you get into just something that is universally thought of as a joke. Like, some of the things we watch we do have a lot of criticisms of them, but it's all because we haven't seen them, and we're not picking things to come out and criticize them. I think that's an important point, right? Because a lot of the conversations we have, if it ever goes negative about that media, it's not the purpose of it. We're not into this group. We're into it to have a good time and to see each other. And if some of that fun conversation happens, it happens. So to kind of like the back end of this panel here, I want us to either like throw out a couple things. Maybe there's people out there that are interested in starting their own Finer Things Club, so that we have a couple tips for them, or throwing out a couple titles that we've really enjoyed without spoiling what it's about, that somebody could use to kind of start their own Finer Things Club as well. I'll throw out, while you guys think about that for a second, I'll throw out a short story that Adan, one of my favorite things we've done all year so far, is a short story Adan has brought up called The Pinch. The Pinch is, was it Yale Press? I think it was Yale Press.
Yes. Yeah.
It was from the Yale Press, just The Pinch.
Review.
Yale Review, if you Google it, you'll find it. And if you have a bunch of friends that have not read that story, it is a brilliant short story. It still tops the list of probably my favorite things one of the favorite things that we've watched or read the entire year so far. So who would like to throw out some ideas here?
Yeah, I'll go. I can't name things that I liked beyond the last thing we did because my memory is terrible. But what I will say is, like, I hope y'all are listening to what the rules were that we kind of laid out, right? Like, just the idea of going into this, not taking it personal if somebody doesn't like a thing that you brought to the table. I think that's really important, because then the conversation can't happen honestly and organically. If we are always removed from the thing that we brought to the table, I think we can, have more fun with that conversation than like me knowing, oh man, Adam brought this movie that he really, really liked. And I don't want to be mean about it, which that didn't stop me because I was mean about one of those ones.
That did happen.
But I think that it's, that says a lot about our friendship that I could do that. But I think, it's tough when you bring like your favorite flick to your friends and you're like watching them as they watch it and they're not like laughing at the right moments. So like, I think like removing that personal part would be a big key thing to do.
I think a part of that for me is that even the person recommending cannot have seen, read, or listened to the recommendation. So it's not like I'm going to cherry pick my favorite movie and hope that everybody likes it. I'm watching it for the first time too. So, I can hate it as much as everybody else does or love it as much as everybody else does. The movie High Fidelity has a famous quote, if you remember that old film or the book, is that it's not what you're like, it's not what you are like, it's what you like. Which I think couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, whether we like it or not is irrelevant. It's how we can express that and not, like Ronell said, not go after someone because of their pick. It's not personal, or not take it personal because you pick something that people didn't like.
Adan, Adam, do you guys have anything to add here?
I'll just toss out a few of the works that I think I really liked. I really liked, and I think it was Eric's pick, Alice Wu's The Half of It. That movie was just incredibly endearing to me. I just fell in love with that. Michael picked Jose Pimienta's Sunkencher, which I really like. I think we all kind of dug that, but I was just I think Ronell really liked the art and the way that it sort of expressed live music. I think was one of the points that he brought up. And that's the other thing too. I think like once you have this group and you have these, great people in it, they just bring, perspectives and thoughts to these works that you may not have had on it, and views on it. And it just enriches that work even more. So it's just pick things that seem fun, that seem cool, that you think people might dig, and then just have great conversations about them, because it's just good being with your homies. Like Ronell said, this all started because we missed each other. And at the end of the day, that's why we get together, when we do.
Yeah. And obviously we get to hang out and we get to, enjoy these things or just enjoy that conversation. But I've had these things kind of added in my life that are appreciated so much. Like we listened to an album, I think it was Adan's pick, Yola's Walk Through Fire. Like, I think if it came out last year, that would have been like one of my top albums for last year, just because it's on repeat, something I really love, something I really dig. The FX show Dave with Lil Dicky, that was like one of the best things I watched, movies or TV shows, period. And then something we just watched, which I think, a bunch of us really, really digged, was Jendi Tartakovsky's Primal, which was like at least for, at the top of my list for all the things that we've done. And just, now that we can come out the other side of like, these are these crazy things that not only we got to watch or listen to or read, but now we get to discuss with our friends. And I think that's my biggest takeaway for all of this. We just get to hang out.
I'd also want to add I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to toss out really quick too, that we watched the film Fast Colors. And I just wanted to bring that up because as we're watching and viewing a lot of these things, they also become things that I think about bringing into the classroom. And Fast Colors was one of them. That film's amazing. And I think I'm going to be teaching it this school year. So I just wanted to bring that up.
All right. Last thing here is make sure also be cognizant of your time, right? If you can't do it every week, do it every other week, do it every third week, do it every month. Do what is good for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we close out here, I want to say thank you for watching and joining. I want to say thank you to Ronell and Adan and Adam and Michael for being here and for kind of being in this club and sharing their experiences with you. I also want to tell you to stick around for the NYCC Metaverse panels that's coming up next. Once again, thank you for being here and enjoy the rest of your weekend.